So, as David Makura prepares to bow out as Gauteng Premier, let's focus now on his legacy. He was elected Premier back in 2014 and led the province through tough times, including the COVID-19 pandemic and the Life Esidimeni tragedy. But parts of the province have also seen violent protests recently, with residents fighting for quality service delivery. The question in some ways becomes, what state is he leaving the province in? To help us answer this question and several other related ones, let's bring in Rashid Seedat, who's also the Executive Director of Gauteng City-Region Observatory, joining us via our video link this morning. Rashid, it's great to see you. Thanks so much indeed for making time to chat to us. And I suppose a related question to the one I've already posed is life better now in Gauteng than perhaps it was before Makura took over? And I appreciate there are various aspects to that question, so perhaps let's hone in on service delivery as a start.
I'm sorry, Yanda, but you broke up there for a second. Just please repeat the question.
Sure. I was saying perhaps as we take stock of Makura's legacy, we should ask the nexus question about whether or not life in Gauteng is better or worse than before he took over. And a part of that, I guess, will push us to having discussions around service delivery as a start.
Well, I think, the answer is always is somewhat ambiguous because there are some positive aspects that we've certainly witnessed over the period of Premier Makura's tenure. And there are aspects where, service delivery has been severely lacking. Of course, the work that we do in the Gauteng City-Region Observatory, concerns both the work of provincial government as well as municipalities. Of course, we do know that provincial government has a overall overarching supervisory role over municipalities. So in a way, there is some level of responsibility there as well.
Yeah. In fact, the organization you're part of conducted a study where you measure the quality of life index. My understanding that Gauteng scored 61 out of 100. Let's place some context into that. Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, it's actually 61 is not too bad. And we've been in the 60s in the course of the last 4 surveys. But in I think 2013, 2014, we were in fact at 61. We improved to 63 in the next survey in 2015-16, and then to 64 in 2017-18, and now we're down to 61. But let me explain. It seems like the numbers are very marginal. But actually, because it's an index, it aggregates everything. All of the questions, weights them appropriately, and then gives you a score. So a decline of even 1 percentage point is quite significant. So in a way, you can almost see an arc in the graph. So it was at 61, improved to 63, 64, and then down to 61. And so that is really the position. And I think, unfortunately, we're in a situation where we're in a sort of a downward trajectory in relation to not only service delivery, but issues of governance around the economy, around the socioeconomic conditions that residents of Gauteng face themselves, and so on. Yeah.
Every leader that's been in power for as long as Makura has will inevitably face moments where they need to make decisions, and how they act in those moments will certainly define how history judges them. What do you reckon the reflections will be around Makura's response, for instance, to the COVID-19 pandemic? Appreciating, of course, that is a response that was led in part, or perhaps largely, by national government.
Well, I should make a slight disclosure here, and that is that I worked in the provincial government at the time. In fact, I was the head of planning in the Premier's office for something like 10 years before I came to this position just over a year ago. So I'm just disclosing that. But I think that the response, in fact, on COVID, in fact, was actually quite comprehensive. There were mistakes made. Certainly the building of certain facilities and so on, and I think those have been very well publicized. There was the issues around the corruption in the Department of Health, and that is a very serious matter indeed. But in terms of the reach and the emphasis that was placed by the provincial government, working in tandem with all municipalities to ensure an effective response, not only on the health and clinical side, but also in terms of the issues around the socio-economic distress that was faced by communities. I'm of course excluding what interventions the national government had put into place. But one of the things that we found in our survey, for example, was that there was actually quite a significant uptake of significant uptake of the social relief of distress grant within Gauteng. And also that there was a sense that of social solidarity that communities within Gauteng actually had at the time. And that was in part driven, I think, by the work of provincial government, municipalities, and civil society. I don't take, I think the kind of position that our survey is reflecting is a balanced one. It's not, it's all doom and gloom. I think, yes, indeed, there are very serious challenges and concerns, but there have been certain positive elements that have come through.
Yeah. Speaking about health, Gauteng Health has, in many instances, been, in the news for all the wrong reasons. From the time of Gledani Mahlangu, when she was Health MEC, there was the Life Esidimeni tragedy. Then Bandile Masuku, a couple of years later on, took over. He faced his own issues around PPE procurement, even though, he reckons he's been absolved in one way or the other. And more recently, there's been real concerns around how Gauteng as a province has responded to the assassination of Babita Dwurkaran. I see health is one of the themes that are explored in this survey. How has Gauteng scored, and to what extent can Makura, as a leader in that province, be held accountable for that?
I think I really want to steer away from the kinds of questions about the politics of it all. Our job in the Gauteng City-Region Observatory is really to reflect on a scientific basis what people are saying. So, but let me say that I think people will be surprised by the results, and that is that the satisfaction of healthcare during the survey, which by the way was at the height of the pandemic. The work that was done in the field, doing 10,000 13,000 face-to-face interviews throughout the province, of course adhering to the protocols, found that actually there was a satisfaction level of 75%. Now, of course, the question is posed generically and does not, take into account that private provision and public provision. But it was in fact it did decline from 78%, which is actually a pretty good score, down to 75%. So let me just say this anecdotally. Of course, we do all hear the horror stories and the very poor quality of service delivery and so on. But anecdotally, people that have been going to public hospitals have been saying that there are actually problems sometimes with basic things like water and other forms of infrastructure and so on. But the clinical care is actually not as bad as one might imagine. I mean, the doctors and the nurses are quite dedicated and really put their shoulders to the wheel in relation to that, in spite of the kinds of constraints that they face. And I'm well aware of, within the Gauteng context of Rahima Musa and their challenges and the challenges at Helen Joseph. And of course, I think the tragedy, I don't think you can use any other word, the tragedy of the fire at Charlotte Macteke Hospital.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there are really great people personnel, some of them the best at what they do. I guess it's a matter of how much support they receive. Rashid, thanks very much indeed for weighing in on this. Really do appreciate your insights this morning. Rashid Seedat is Executive Director at Gauteng City-Region Observatory. Once again, thanks very much indeed.